August 19, 1944, opened beneath heavy Prussian skies inside Wehrmacht headquarters. Maps glowed with pins and penciled arcs. General Alfred Jodl studied columns of figures calmly, believing arithmetic offered certainty where battlefield intuition failed, and that numbers alone could foretell an American collapse approaching with mechanical inevitability soon. Reports from France lay stacked like ledgers of doom, detailing Patton's Third Army advance across shattered provinces. 400 miles in 30 days mocked precedent. Yet to Jodl such speed signaled self-destruction, because momentum without supply transformed triumph into delay, exhaustion, and mathematically predictable failure for planners everywhere now. German staff officers trusted calculations born from their own brutal campaigns, where logistics strangled ambition relentlessly. They knew armored divisions devoured fuel like furnaces, demanding 150,000 gallons daily while advancing. Such appetites, multiplied across fronts, promised inevitable paralysis once distance severed lifelines beyond established depots entirely. Lines. Patton commanded 12 divisions scattered along a 60-mile front, an impressive mass concealing fragility underneath. Normandy beaches lay 400 miles behind, depots shrinking with every mile gained. To German minds, bridges wrecked and rails twisted ensured. American supply arithmetic would collapse under simple physical limits eventually, decisively soon. The Wehrmacht retreat through France had been methodical destruction, not panic flight, erasing infrastructure deliberately. Roads cratered, bridges dropped, rail yards burned, all calculated to slow pursuit. Jodl's staff assumed this devastation functioned like an invisible division, halting American armor without firing shells, purely through enforced starvation of fuel supplies. Experience in the East hardened German confidence, because Russia had taught unforgiving lessons. Panzer columns stalled not from Soviet fire initially, but empty tanks and broken trucks. Horses pulling wagons lagged hopelessly, rail gauges betrayed planners, and entire divisions froze awaiting supplies that never arrived across vast distances there repeatedly. Thus Patton appeared trapped by success, his machines demanding nourishment beyond reach. German intelligence tracked consumption obsessively, converting American speed into vulnerability. A Sherman drank fuel greedily, infantry ate 700 tons daily, armored formations required 1,000. Summed together, these figures screamed impossibility louder than artillery ever could alone. On paper, the advance should halt at the Seine, granting Germany precious time. Reserves could assemble, defensive lines deepen, winter breathe its cold advantage. Jodl envisioned a pause restoring strategic balance, where American overreach corrected itself naturally. Mathematics promised relief, a quiet confidence amid collapsing fronts elsewhere during summer calculations. Confidence flowed through headquarters corridors, built upon doctrine forged earlier by German innovation. Blitzkrieg itself had proven logistics decisive, not heroics. Therefore, enemies obeyed identical constraints, or so reasoning went. Physics governed war impersonally, and fuel distances ignored national character. In East Prussia, certainty reigned stronger than doubt that morning. Yet unseen by German analysts, American logisticians labored beyond charts and expectations. Their thinking rejected pauses, embracing motion as solution. Instead of shortening fronts, they imagined extending roads themselves. Jodl's equations lacked imagination, mistaking precedent for law. The battlefield was about to expose that difference brutally through action alone soon. The German staff could not perceive preparations already unfolding far westward. Assumptions blinded even experienced minds because enemy innovation rarely announces itself. Logistics officers remained invisible, uncelebrated, dismissed as clerks. Their coming intervention would challenge doctrine deeper than any tank engagement, rewriting assumptions etched by earlier campaigns and misread histories. Within Wehrmacht headquarters, intelligence officers moved deliberately, surrounded by ledgers, maps, and fuel tables, convinced that war could be reduced into consumable quantities. Every report from France was dissected into gallons, miles, hours, transforming battlefield chaos into orderly projections that reassured commanders seeking certainty amid accelerating Allied advances across the Western theater. German analysts believed intelligence meant restraint rather than imagination, a discipline refined through years of mechanized warfare. They tracked American fuel usage obsessively, convinced excess speed created predictable weakness. To them, Patton's advance resembled an engine redlined beyond tolerance, impressive briefly, yet destined for mechanical seizure once supply mathematics asserted dominance again. Each armored division's appetite was carefully annotated, 150,000 gallons daily when advancing aggressively. Multiplied across formations, such figures dwarfed available infrastructure. Intelligence officers saw inevitability within these sums, trusting arithmetic more than battlefield audacity. Numbers, unlike generals, never panicked or exaggerated, and therefore seemed safer guides for strategic expectation. Maps of France revealed scars inflicted by German retreating units. Bridges collapsed and rail lines twisted deliberately. Intelligence assessments treated this devastation as force multiplier, ensuring American convoys slowed regardless of intent. Roads narrowed into bottlenecks, converting Patton's momentum into congestion. German planners assumed infrastructure destruction enforced natural limits no enemy ingenuity could bypass. Consumption charts expanded alongside distance graphs, showing Normandy depots receding further behind spearhead units. Analysts calculated turnaround times exceeding tolerable thresholds, guaranteeing shortages. Every additional mile compounded dependency, a curve Germans recognized from earlier campaigns. Thus, intelligence summaries framed American progress as self-correcting excess, rather than sustainable operational mastery. Photographic reconnaissance reinforced these beliefs, showing columns of trucks queued near supply points. To German eyes, congestion signaled strain, not preparation. Each image validated expectations, strengthening institutional confidence. Intelligence culture rewarded confirmation, encouraging analysts to interpret ambiguous evidence as proof their models accurately described unfolding Allied exhaustion. Veterans of Eastern campaigns influenced younger officers profoundly, recounting immobilized divisions stranded without fuel. Those memories shaped analytic instincts, teaching that logistics punished ambition without mercy. Consequently, American forces appeared destined to repeat German mistakes, substituting different flags but identical vulnerabilities. Experience overshadowed imagination, narrowing acceptable interpretations of intelligence data. Briefings emphasized tonnage over tactics, reducing divisions into abstract supply consumers. Commanders became variables within equations, stripped of improvisational agency. Patton's personality mattered little against consumption curves. Intelligence assessments spoke clinically, predicting halt lines and recovery windows, presenting outcomes as inevitabilities rather than contingent possibilities requiring vigilance. Weather forecasts joined intelligence calculations, predicting autumn rains worsening already damaged roads. Mud and erosion promised additional friction, further constraining American throughput. German planners welcomed environmental allies, expecting nature itself to enforce the pause. Such assumptions deepened confidence that logistical collapse required no direct German intervention beyond patience. Reports circulated upward with measured language, avoiding alarm while projecting certainty. High command absorbed conclusions comfortably because they aligned with doctrinal expectations. Intelligence thereby reinforced existing beliefs, creating closed feedback loops. Doubt appeared unnecessary when mathematics appeared settled, offering clarity amidst strategic withdrawal pressures across collapsing fronts. Unseen by these analysts, American logistics officers were abandoning conventional frameworks entirely. Intelligence missed conceptual shifts because models assumed compliance with established doctrine. The idea of continuous convoy systems lay beyond analytic vocabulary. Thus, German intelligence accurately measured yesterday's war, while tomorrow's solutions developed outside predictive reach. As assessments finalized, Wehrmacht headquarters rested upon numbers counted carefully and confidently. Gallons, miles, and hours formed an intellectual fortress against anxiety. Yet certainty carried hidden fragility because adaptability resided beyond charts. Soon the counted gallons would move faster than predicted, challenging intelligence that mistook precision for omniscience. Memories of the Eastern Front haunted German strategic thinking, shaping every judgment made in 1944. Russia represented humiliation written in fuel shortages and frozen corpses. Those experiences hardened belief that logistics, not enemy resistance, destroyed offensives. Therefore, Patton's speed awakened familiar dread, appearing identical to German overreach once celebrated then punished brutally. Veteran officers recalled summer advances across Ukraine that outpaced supply columns fatally. Panzers surged forward brilliantly, only to stall helplessly without fuel. That recollection framed American momentum negatively because Germans assumed history repeated mechanically. To them, Patton's thrust mirrored their own early triumphs. Moments before starvation halted everything irreversibly across endless plains. Russian roads haunted German memory vividly, swallowing trucks and shattering suspensions. Supply vehicles broke faster than mechanics could repair them. Horses replaced engines increasingly, slowing formations drastically. Such logistical decay preceded Soviet counterblows, teaching Germans that mechanical superiority inverted into liability when distances expanded beyond sustainable reach for any army. Railway mismatches compounded disaster as differing gauges stranded supplies far behind front lines. Entire depots filled uselessly, inaccessible to fighting units. That frustration burned deeply into German institutional memory. Consequently, analysts, viewing American advances, assumed similar infrastructural betrayals awaited them. Converting success into paralysis without enemy engagement required immediately or decisively soon. Winter compounded suffering, freezing fuel lines and immobilizing machines. German planners learned climate punished ambition mercilessly. Thus, seasonal forecasts shaped later intelligence judgments. As autumn approached France, Germans expected weather assistance again. Patton's progress appeared reckless, ignoring lessons etched by ice and hunger experienced earlier by German soldiers across eastern expanses. These collective memories created analytical bias, privileging precedent over innovation. Germans trusted experiential scars more than enemy creativity. Russian ghosts whispered warnings inside headquarters, reinforcing conviction that logistics enforced universal law. Any army advancing too far too fast would suffer identical fate, regardless of nationality, doctrine, or organizational structure. Commanders like Hasso von Manteuffel internalized these lessons deeply, shaping operational expectations. They believed Americans faced same mechanical fragility. Machines consumed fuel mercilessly, demanded maintenance relentlessly. Thus, German experience reframed American advantages into vulnerabilities. Assuming technological reliance inevitably collapsed when supply networks stretched thin beyond manageable limits. Stories circulated of divisions stranded helplessly, awaiting fuel that never arrived. Soldiers remembered comrades dying without firing shots, victims of empty tanks, not enemy bullets. Those recollections fostered grim certainty. When intelligence reported American consumption rates, veterans nodded knowingly, recognizing familiar symptoms preceding catastrophic stalls they themselves endured previously. German doctrine crystallized around these lessons, emphasizing measured advances and secured logistics. Therefore, Patton's audacity appeared irrational rather than brilliant. Analysts dismissed American optimism as ignorance of mechanized warfare's unforgiving demands. Russian ghosts provided authoritative voice, cautioning against believing momentum could substitute for supply under modern conditions. The Eastern catastrophe also undermined faith in improvisation. German attempts to adapt logistics mid-campaign had failed repeatedly. Thus, intelligence officers doubted Americans could innovate meaningfully under pressure. To them, logistics represented fixed constraint, not flexible system. That assumption shaped every prediction regarding Third Army's impending exhaustion. American organizational culture remained poorly understood within German headquarters. Planners underestimated bureaucratic capacity for rapid adaptation. Russian experience had taught Germans their own limits, not necessarily universal ones. Yet trauma narrowed perspective, causing analysts to universalize German failures as immutable truths governing all mechanized warfare inevitably. Thus, Patton appeared doomed through lens of memory rather than observation. Russian ghosts spoke louder than present realities. German confidence rested upon suffering, remembered vividly. Unseen was an approaching divergence, where American logistics would challenge historical analogies, proving that experience, while instructive, could also mislead profoundly. German planners trusted fuel consumption as immutable law, believing engines defined operational destiny more rigidly than human intent. Distance multiplied that law relentlessly, each mile expanding demand curves beyond infrastructure capacity. To them, physics governed war impersonally, ensuring Patton's advance would decelerate once fuel mathematics overwhelmed ambition and bravado alike. Road conditions reinforced German certainty because retreating forces had transformed highways into obstacles deliberately. Craters slowed convoys, debris narrowed lanes, and broken bridges forced detours. Intelligence officers assumed trucks obeyed surface limitations, concluding that damaged French roads imposed speed ceilings impossible to overcome, regardless of organizational effort or driver determination. Fuel calculations dominated briefings, presented with scientific confidence. An armored division advancing aggressively consumed staggering quantities daily, figures derived from German operational records. Multiplied across Patton's front, totals exceeded theoretical delivery limits. German minds treated these numbers as physical constants, similar to gravity, unquestionable and universally binding across all mechanized forces. Distance from Normandy compounded every projection, creating exponential strain. Supplies traveled hundreds of miles through hostile terrain. Turnaround times ballooned, reducing effective throughput dramatically. German staff reasoned that even perfect discipline could not compress geography. Space itself became ally, stretching American logistics until fuel scarcity enforced a pause. Destroyed rail networks further validated German expectations. Railways historically moved tonnage efficiently, yet retreat had crippled them. Trucks replaced trains reluctantly, increasing fuel consumption further. Planners assumed this substitution accelerated collapse. Each mile driven burned fuel delivering fuel, a paradox German officers believed doomed any extended pursuit mechanically. Maps displayed infrastructure scars vividly, reinforcing confidence. Every collapsed bridge represented hours lost, every detour gallons wasted. German engineers calculated bypass times meticulously. Such assessments portrayed American convoys crawling under cumulative friction. Physics appeared merciless, reducing Patton's momentum to theoretical impossibility under sustained conditions. Weather projections strengthened belief in inevitable slowdown. Late summer heat stressed engines, increased breakdown rates, and degraded roads. Autumn rains threatened mud, amplifying resistance. German planners trusted environment as enforcing agent. Nature, like fuel arithmetic, respected no general, ensuring operational reality aligned with calculated limits. German doctrine emphasized respecting logistical physics, lessons learned painfully earlier. Overconfidence in machines had once betrayed them. Therefore, analysts believed Americans repeating that error would face similar consequences. Technological abundance masked vulnerability because machines demanded continuous nourishment. Without fuel, steel became dead weight, immobilizing ambition. Patton's reputation for speed intensified German skepticism. Speed magnified consumption disproportionately, accelerating depletion curves. Analysts argued moderation preserved endurance. Thus American haste appeared reckless. Physics rewarded restraint, not audacity. German officers saw Patton's advance as violation of this principle, guaranteeing correction through inevitable logistical exhaustion. Supply depots shrinking behind advancing units symbolized approaching failure. Each mile widened separation between need and source. German staff visualized elastic stretched too far, eventually it snapped. That mental image dominated assessments, portraying collapse not as possibility but certainty awaiting correct distance threshold. German confidence rested upon belief that physics operated independently of organization. No rearrangement could defeat fuel laws. Trucks required fuel regardless of scheduling. Roads imposed resistance regardless of motivation. Such assumptions discounted systemic innovation. Physics appeared final arbiter, promising Patton's advance would self-terminate predictably. Thus, Wehrmacht headquarters rested calmly upon charts and formulas. Fuel distance and roads formed trinity of constraint. German planners believed these forces impartial and absolute. Unseen was a challenge emerging, where organization would manipulate flow itself, bending perceived physics through relentless movement and unprecedented logistical orchestration. German confidence crystallized around the Seine River line, imagined as natural terminus for American momentum. Maps marked it quietly, not as battlefield objective but logistical inevitability. Planners believed Patton's columns would arrive depleted, engines coughing dry. The river symbolized correction, where arithmetic reclaimed authority from speed and ambition under immutable constraints. Staff discussions treated the Seine halt as scheduling problem, not speculation. Once American armor reached that line, supply deficits would manifest visibly. German units could regroup, reorganize, and entrench deliberately. Confidence stemmed from expectation that enemy exhaustion would deliver operational breathing. Space without costly counteroffensives or risky maneuvers demanded from weakened forces. The pause promised strategic dividends beyond immediate relief. Winter preparations depended upon time. Defensive belts could thicken, reserves reposition, command coherence restored. German confidence settled into routine planning, assuming Americans unknowingly cooperated by advancing faster than logistics allowed. The Seine thus became planning anchor, stabilizing projections across collapsing Western fronts. Intelligence summaries circulated predicting precise halt windows presented calmly. Officers discussed dates and tonnage shortfalls with detachment. Such certainty insulated morale, because inevitability reduced anxiety. The enemy's mistake appeared already made. German confidence no longer required dramatic victories. Only patience while mathematics completed its quiet work. Operational orders reflected this expectation, prioritizing delay rather than decisive engagement. Units withdrew methodically, trading space for time. The same pause would allow fresh deployments. German doctrine favored elastic defense, and here it seemed validated perfectly. Confidence grew from belief that enemy overextension performed Germany's work automatically. Maps of the Seine corridor showed limited crossing capacity, reinforcing expectations. Bridges destroyed earlier would complicate American movement further. Engineers calculated repair times exceeding sustainable supply windows. The river thus combined geography with logistics, appearing ideal choke point. German planners trusted terrain to amplify fuel scarcity into operational paralysis. Patton's reputation for relentless advance ironically strengthened German assurance. Speed magnified mistakes. Analysts argued he would not pause voluntarily, accelerating toward collapse. Confidence rested on assumption that American command culture valued momentum over prudence. Thus the Seine awaited, not as defensive line, but as lesson in restraint delivered by reality. German commanders discussed counterstroke possibilities once the halt occurred. Panzer reserves might exploit immobilized spearheads. Such conversations reflected settled belief, not contingency planning. Confidence allowed imagination to roam toward recovery scenarios. The enemy's pause seemed so certain that future German actions could be scheduled confidently around it. Logistical models predicted dramatic fuel shortages precisely as American columns approached the river. Charts showed delivery curves flattening disastrously. Officers trusted these visuals deeply. They represented culmination of earlier calculations. The Seine halt became focal point where all data converged, reinforcing belief that war obeyed predictable mechanical rhythms. Reports from retreating units further bolstered confidence, describing Americans stretched thin behind vanguards. To German ears, these sounded like confirmation. The narrative solidified. Intelligence and doctrine aligned seamlessly. Confidence no longer required debate, because every indicator appeared consistent with expected outcome forming inexorably ahead. This assurance dulled urgency within headquarters. Resources allocated elsewhere because Western crisis seemed self-resolving. Confidence bred complacency quietly. Few questioned assumptions. The Seine halt felt inevitable, requiring observation rather than intervention. Such mindset underestimated opponent adaptability, mistaking linear projection for comprehensive understanding of unfolding operational reality. As days passed, German confidence settled comfortably upon the Seine expectation. It offered psychological refuge amid strategic retreat. Numbers promised pause, geography promised reinforcement, history promised repetition. Yet beneath this certainty lay vulnerability, because confidence anchored to prediction ignored emerging American solutions accelerating invisibly toward that very river line. August 25, 1944 unfolded inside a requisition chateau near Laval, where exhaustion replaced theory abruptly. Traditional logistics had failed visibly. Convoys stalled and schedules meaningless. Officers confronted reality unfiltered by charts. Patton's army consumed supplies faster than any structure could deliver, exposing systemic collapse that calculations had predicted incorrectly. Rail transport lay hopelessly behind events, trains unloading far from need. Depots overflowed uselessly while frontline units starved. Scheduled convoys clogged access roads, creating paralysis instead of flow. The elegant frameworks admired by planners disintegrated, revealing logistics not as orderly pipeline but brittle mechanism unable to absorb unprecedented tempo. Colonel Charles Thrasher addressed skeptical officers with blunt urgency. He acknowledged collapse openly, discarding comforting illusions. No timetable functioned, no reserve existed. The system designed for measured advances faced annihilation under Patton's velocity. This admission marked rupture, where doctrine surrendered authority to improvisation demanded by survival. The room reflected disbelief, because collapse contradicted training. Officers had been taught logistics equaled predictability. Now predictability vanished. Thrasher proposed abandoning sequential delivery entirely. Instead of restoring order, he demanded radical motion. His words challenged institutional comfort, insisting that failure required invention rather than correction within existing frameworks. He described a one-way highway stretching from beaches to front, an artery of constant motion. Trucks would not wait, queue, or pause. Movement itself became solution. This concept inverted doctrine completely, transforming supply from scheduled support into continuous offensive action, mirroring combat tempo directly. Conventional safeguards vanished instantly. Blackout discipline ended, headlights blazing through night. Speed replaced caution. Convoys spaced minutes apart formed rivers of steel. Maintenance occurred roadside under pressure. Any truck slowing below threshold risked abandonment. Efficiency trumped preservation, reflecting desperation fused with audacity unprecedented in American logistics. Officers struggled absorbing implications. Safety doctrines dissolved, risk escalated dramatically. Yet collapse permitted no alternatives. The Army either moved continuously or halted catastrophically. Thrasher framed choice starkly. Logistics ceased being background function, becoming decisive frontline operation determining whether Patton's advance survived another week. The proposal demanded scale unimaginable, thousands of vehicles operating nearly nonstop. Availability targets defied manuals. Every assumption German planners trusted dissolved here. Instead of reducing consumption, Americans embraced it, betting organization could outpace arithmetic. This gamble represented conceptual rupture, redefining what logistics meant under modern mechanized warfare conditions. Within hours, planning accelerated frantically. Routes designated, regulations rewritten overnight. Military police empowered ruthlessly. Repair teams redeployed. The collapse forced speed of decision rarely witnessed. Bureaucracy melted under urgency. What doctrine resisted, necessity compelled. Laval became birthplace of logistical revolution forged under existential pressure. This moment separated theory from reality definitively. German calculations assumed systems behaved predictably under stress. They underestimated willingness to discard rules entirely. Collapse did not paralyze Americans. It liberated them. Constraints transformed into catalysts. Compelling solutions invisible to those assuming rigidity governed all large organizations inevitably. By nightfall, momentum returned unexpectedly, not through restoration but transformation. Trucks rolled despite incomplete preparation. Imperfection accepted. Motion prioritized. Collapse had triggered rebirth. This pivot defied German expectations because it violated premise that logistics failure equaled halt. Instead, failure generated unprecedented acceleration toward front lines. August 25th thus marked turning point, unnoticed by enemy intelligence. While Germans awaited sane halt, Americans reinvented supply itself. Collapse exposed vulnerability but also opportunity. From Laval forward, logistics ceased obeying conventional physics, entering realm where organization and endurance rewrote boundaries previously assumed immutable. The concept emerged brutally simple: motion would replace scheduling entirely across the supply network. One direction only eliminated hesitation, confusion, and collision. Loaded trucks surged forward continuously, empties returned separately, creating circulation rather than congestion. This one-way logic converted roads into arteries, where flow mattered more than individual vehicle preservation. Designers accepted extreme assumptions. Vehicles would operate 20 hours daily with minimal rest. Headlights burned through darkness openly, rejecting blackout discipline completely. Speed targets replaced caution, enforcing 35-mile averages relentlessly. The system demanded obedience, because any pause threatened collapse of the entire moving chain under constant pressure without exception daily. Military police enforced discipline ruthlessly along designated routes, measuring speed not intent. Any truck falling below thresholds faced removal immediately. Repairs occurred roadside within minutes, otherwise abandonment followed. Preservation surrendered to throughput, reflecting acceptance that equipment mattered less than uninterrupted delivery, sustaining Patton's forward momentum during relentless operational pressure daily continuously. Parallel highways separated burdened vehicles from returning empties, preventing interference entirely. This spatial separation doubled efficiency without expanding infrastructure. Flow replaced scheduling as governing principle. Engineers realized that controlling direction simplified complexity, transforming damaged French roads into predictable conveyors rather than chaotic bottlenecks choking advance under sustained logistical pressure conditions constantly. Convoy intervals standardized movement rhythm, 5 minutes between columns maintaining spacing. Speed enforcement prevented accordion effects. Continuous circulation emerged, resembling industrial assembly lines more than military columns. This industrial logic shocked traditionalists, yet proved essential for sustaining unprecedented tonnage demands across extended distances relentlessly without operational interruption during peak consumption periods. Maintenance doctrine transformed instantly, favoring speed over longevity. Mechanics worked under headlights, cannibalizing parts shamelessly. 15 minutes determined fate, beyond that vehicles died roadside. Such brutality contradicted peacetime standards, yet aligned perfectly with wartime necessity, prioritizing momentum above preservation during continuous operations, sustaining Patton's relentless offensive tempo daily forward advance. Drivers became central actors, endurance replacing caution as virtue. Many operated through exhaustion, guided by discipline and urgency. The system demanded human resilience equal to mechanical reliability. Organization harnessed labor intensity deliberately, accepting fatigue as currency exchanged for forward movement and operational survival under sustained combat pressure conditions constantly endured. Command authority centralized rapidly, bypassing slower approval chains. Decisions occurred roadside, not headquarters. Flexibility replaced permission. This decentralization accelerated adaptation, enabling immediate responses to breakdowns. German doctrine underestimated such elasticity, assuming bureaucracy constrained American action irreversibly during crisis under extreme logistical stress without historical precedent whatsoever anywhere in modern warfare. Risk acceptance defined the convoy system, accidents tolerated to maintain flow, safety yielded to urgency. Headlights invited attack, yet speed reduced vulnerability. Calculated exposure replaced concealment. Such trade-offs reflected recognition that stalling guaranteed defeat, whereas motion preserved initiative despite danger during continuous operations across hostile territory nightly, without pause conditions. Logistics transformed into offensive weapon, sustaining pressure continuously. Supplies arrived faster than enemy anticipated, denying recovery. This inversion shocked German expectations because it weaponized organization itself. Convoys became spearheads indirectly, enabling armor to strike where calculations predicted paralysis through relentless scheduling abandonment and disciplined motion day and night operations sustained. Implementation speed astonished participants because planning converted to execution within hours. Imperfection accepted openly. Adaptation occurred en route. The system thrived not through polish, but through persistence. This ethos contrasted sharply with German reverence for order and procedural completeness. Under emergency conditions demanding immediate results without hesitation whatsoever or delay. Thus one-way movement redefined logistics fundamentally, converting collapse into propulsion. Roads became engines, drivers became lifeblood. This unthinkable system birthed momentum anew. While Germans awaited halt, Americans built velocity, ensuring Patton's advance survived physics through organization alone with relentless endurance improvisation and collective effort sustained continuously forward daily operations. 6,000 trucks lined roads from Normandy to the front, forming a metallic river defying conventional wisdom. Speed replaced caution entirely, headlights slicing night while engines droned relentlessly. Drivers moved with purpose, aware that any pause threatened collapse. Momentum became survival, and motion itself became instrument of tactical advantage unseen in prior campaigns anywhere. The scale astonished observers because logistics traditionally relied on measured increments. Here, quantity amplified velocity, converting what German doctrine assumed impossible into operational reality. Trucks surged continuously, parallel highways preventing bottlenecks. Convoys flowed like water through engineered channels, erasing inefficiency entirely while challenging assumptions about what mechanized supply could achieve during sustained advance under hostile conditions daily. Each vehicle carried life-sustaining tonnage of fuel, ammunition, or rations. Loss of even one threatened downstream units. Maintenance crews operated roadside tirelessly, repairing or cannibalizing trucks immediately. Vehicles falling behind were abandoned, a deliberate trade-off prioritizing flow over preservation. The system thrived on ruthless efficiency, enforcing continuity over traditional notions of care under operational duress. Commanders monitored intervals obsessively, 5 minutes between columns, maintaining velocity and reducing collisions. Speed enforcement ensured consistent averages, preventing accordion effects on narrow roads. Discipline replaced intuition as governing principle. Drivers obeyed instruments, maps, and orders rather than instinct. The system functioned because human endurance met mechanical reliability and precise coordination sustained continuously without pause or delay. Breakdowns occurred, yet rarely interrupted overall momentum. Mobile repair units moved along arteries, addressing faults on the spot. 15 minutes was the maximum acceptable downtime. Beyond that, vehicles were left roadside. The risk of abandonment underscored priority of throughput over completeness, forcing officers to accept imperfection as inevitable cost of sustaining relentless forward motion across hundreds of miles. Night travel became routine, blackout abandoned entirely. Convoys ran under headlights, moving with audacious speed while German intelligence presumed delay. Darkness, previously a protective measure, now augmented efficiency. Discipline maintained spacing, ensured fuel delivery, and maximized road utilization. The audacity of movement demonstrated that doctrinal caution could be discarded successfully when scale and coordination compensated for inherent risks continuously over extended duration. African American drivers formed majority of personnel, their skill and endurance essential to maintaining momentum. Long hours, limited rest, and constant vigilance demanded extraordinary commitment. This human element transformed mechanical advantage into operational success. Without resilience, trucks would stall and convoys fail, demonstrating that logistical innovation relied not only on planning but also on disciplined labor applied under extraordinary stress conditions. Routes were continuously monitored, and military police enforced speed rigorously. Any vehicle below 25 miles per hour was removed from circulation. Discipline was absolute, minimizing delays and maximizing throughput. The scale of enforcement reflected recognition that conventional rules of engagement or peacetime concern could not govern operational success under conditions demanding uninterrupted movement day and night continuously. Weather added complexity, yet momentum remained uninterrupted. Mud, rain, and poor road surfaces were obstacles overcome through determination and speed. Slower movement was unacceptable. Trucks pressed forward regardless, demonstrating that velocity substituted for safety. Operational doctrine became experimental, evolving with conditions. Calculations previously assumed absolute failure proved irrelevant when applied to living, adaptive systems under stress daily. Convoys carried weapons, ammunition, fuel, and rations simultaneously, transforming supply lines into offensive instruments. Arrival of tonnage enabled armored units to strike where German planners assumed pause would occur. The principle of continuous movement weaponized logistics itself. Speed replaced pause, audacity substituted caution, and initiative flowed mechanically through roads to sustain battlefield dominance relentlessly forward. German observers recorded the phenomenon with disbelief because numbers defied expectation. 6,000 trucks executing 24-hour circulation seemed impossible. Speed alone maintained cohesion and flow became power. Mathematical models failed to account for continuous human and mechanical endurance, synchronized precisely to maintain delivery. Doctrine was shattered by relentless motion, forcing reassessment of assumed operational limits entirely. As days passed, convoys refined rhythm, spacing, and coordination, improving efficiency. Imperfections remained, yet systems survived through sheer scale and persistence. Abandonment and repair became tactical tools rather than failures. Momentum replaced adherence to textbook safety and speed. American planners demonstrated that audacity, organization, and endurance could overcome theoretical impossibilities assumed inevitable by German calculation in advance. By consolidating trucks, drivers, and resources into continuous movement, Patton's advance became unstoppable, operating outside German expectation. Every hour maintained forward pressure, denying adversaries pause. The principle was clear. Speed was authority, and caution a relic. 6,000 vehicles became living proof that doctrine could be challenged effectively when discipline, scale, and innovation aligned under relentless operational application day and night. August 26, 1944 dawned without rest for American drivers, engines humming continuously through darkness, carrying life and death across devastated roads. The Red Ball Express commenced in earnest, a living artery of fuel and ammunition surging toward forward units. Momentum itself became weaponized, sustaining Patton's advance with relentless persistence and audacious precision overnight. Drivers of the 3916th Quartermaster Truck Company climbed into GMCCCKWs, deuce-and-a-half trucks loaded heavily with essentials. Each vehicle represented a lifeline, every turn of the wheels sustaining the forward momentum previously deemed impossible. Exhaustion and vigilance combined. Human and machine fused into operational continuity that defied German assumptions regarding American logistical limitations entirely. Convoys stretched for miles, headlights blazing openly, disregarding blackout restrictions. Night travel transformed into performance of coordination, rhythm, and endurance. Speed, discipline, and spacing maintained uninterrupted flow. Every vehicle adhered to 5-minute intervals, ensuring predictable movement and preventing bottlenecks. The Red Ball system functioned as a living network, channels of supply flowing unceasingly toward eager divisions beyond the front. African American drivers formed the backbone of the operation. Their commitment extraordinary under relentless conditions. Long hours, fatigue, and stress tested endurance constantly. Yet discipline maintained cohesion. Their skill converted theoretical planning into tangible results. Logistics became performance art, executed flawlessly by human precision aligned with mechanical reliability, sustaining operations over hundreds of miles continuously without pause or failure. Maintenance units moved alongside convoys, ready to repair within 15 minutes or abandon otherwise. Speed dictated priority, preservation yielded to momentum. Roadside improvisation became standard procedure, ensuring continuity of flow. Trucks slowed minimally, replaced rapidly when necessary, and human labor converted crisis into opportunity, proving that unconventional methods could succeed under extreme operational pressure during the first night of Red Ball operations. Command authority decentralized, empowering officers to make instantaneous decisions roadside. Flexibility replaced rigid chain-of-command procedures, allowing convoys to adapt quickly to obstacles, breakdowns, or accidents. Orders flowed laterally, and rapid adjustment became survival mechanism. Such organizational elasticity confounded traditional expectations, demonstrating that speed and initiative combined could sustain logistical operations previously considered impossible under doctrine alone. Fuel, ammunition, and rations flowed forward continuously, enabling armored divisions to strike without pause. German calculations predicting immobilization failed utterly. Momentum became operational tool, dictating battlefield possibilities rather than being constrained by supply. The Red Ball Express demonstrated that logistics could operate as strategic weapon, bridging conceptual gap between planning and execution with unprecedented audacity and organization during the opening hours. Coordination extended across multiple parallel routes, separating loaded trucks and returning empties. Spacing and timing maximized throughput and minimized interference. Roads became conduits, enabling thousands of vehicles to move simultaneously without collision. This dual-lane approach amplified efficiency, converting damaged infrastructure into functional high-capacity supply lines, capable of sustaining advance previously assumed impossible by German observers. Night travel increased vulnerability, yet continuous motion mitigated risk. Constant speed and discipline reduced exposure, while headlights maintained progress. Convoys ignored traditional protective measures, trusting coordination and persistence. Danger remained present, but speed itself became defense. Red Ball operators understood that delay would kill advance, whereas relentless motion preserved initiative and operational continuity despite threats along the route. German intelligence struggled to interpret the operation, observing columns moving faster than expected while anticipating halt at predictable points. Reports failed to capture the improvisation, coordination, and endurance fueling success. Red Ball shattered assumptions, rendering prior calculations obsolete. Momentum invalidated expectation, proving doctrine insufficient against operational creativity and relentless determination, combined with organizational ingenuity beyond prior precedent. Every delivery reinforced forward momentum, sustaining divisions already in motion. Trucks carried more than supplies, they carried initiative, maintaining pressure on German positions that anticipated pause. Success derived from scale, speed, and disciplined continuity, not superior firepower alone. The Red Ball Express exemplified that logistical mastery could dictate battlefield outcomes when organization moved faster than prediction allowed entirely. By midnight, the operation demonstrated viability, confirming audacious planning could overcome obstacles previously thought insurmountable. Roads, drivers, and trucks functioned as single organism. Momentum became self-perpetuating, while German planners realized expectations were obsolete. Engines continued through night uninterrupted, illustrating how relentless operational flow could override doctrine, infrastructure limitations, and conventional assumptions to sustain Patton's army forward. German generals had anticipated predictable pauses, assuming supply and distance governed victory. Instead, the Red Ball Express shattered every expectation, revealing that organization, endurance, and audacious planning could bend logistical reality. Their doctrines, forged by Russian winters and mechanized campaigns, proved inadequate against relentless American motion sustained continuously across hundreds of miles under extreme conditions. Patton's advance no longer depended solely upon tanks or infantry, but upon the disciplined circulation of trucks delivering fuel, ammunition, and rations. Logistics became strategic weapon. Movement itself enforced initiative, denying German forces opportunity to regroup. Theoretical calculations of halt were irrelevant, because operational innovation converted supply into momentum, sustaining combat power far beyond previously assumed operational limits across contested territory. German confidence eroded as reports arrived, showing continuous delivery and forward strikes. Numbers they trusted as immutable failed to reflect reality. 6,000 trucks, operating 24 hours daily, illustrated a principle they had dismissed. Doctrine could be redefined dynamically through human ingenuity, coordinated labor, and relentless commitment, demonstrating that operational success could emerge from organizational audacity rather than brute force alone entirely. The scale of the Red Ball Express exposed a fundamental misjudgment, underestimating American willingness to discard convention for efficacy. Trucks moved with precision, headlights blazing through darkness, intervals maintained rigorously. Maintenance crews repaired vehicles roadside. Human and mechanical elements merged seamlessly, proving that doctrine based on historical precedent could be invalidated by adaptation, endurance, and audacity in operational execution entirely. German planners struggled to reconcile expectations with unfolding events. They had assumed overextension led inevitably to pause and attrition. Instead, continuous motion created compounding advantage. American logistics operated as living organism, sustaining offensive power through a chain of relentless movement. The gap between doctrine and reality became obvious, highlighting how calculation alone could not predict the effects of inventive organization. The human dimension proved decisive, with drivers enduring exhaustion, harsh conditions, and danger, yet maintaining flow. Discipline, endurance, and coordination amplified mechanical potential. Logistics ceased being background support. It became force multiplier. German assumptions about predictable supply failure proved irrelevant when human will and system design overcame constraints previously regarded as insurmountable. Red Ball demonstrated that speed and persistence outweighed caution, redefining operational theory. Traditional metrics, mileage, consumption rates, infrastructure limitations were no longer sufficient to predict outcomes. German calculations ignored adaptability, which now proved decisive. Operational flow itself dictated success, and supply lines evolved from static support to dynamic instruments of strategic dominance on the battlefield continuously. The shock of realization spread through German command. Prior campaigns, reliant upon attrition and logistical collapse, offered no template for understanding this innovation. American forces had exploited scale, coordination, and audacity simultaneously. Doctrine failed to anticipate this transformation, revealing a fundamental vulnerability in rigid thinking. Supply and movement could be weaponized to achieve battlefield supremacy, altering warfare permanently. Patton's success forced German officers to reconsider assumptions about the relationship between mechanics, fuel, and speed. Historical experience could not predict American improvisation. Supply lines became offensive tool rather than limiting factor. Movement itself became decisive, proving that logistics was no longer auxiliary, but central to operational planning. Warfare had evolved, placing organization, endurance, and coordination at its core fundamentally. The psychological effect on German troops and planners was profound, undermining confidence built on precedent. Predictable pauses evaporated, replaced by relentless American pressure. The Red Ball Express reshaped expectations, proving that momentum, enabled by disciplined logistics, could outpace even the most methodical defensive calculations and deny operational breathing space entirely, forcing Germany to confront a new reality of continuous engagement. Innovation, scale, and endurance coalesced into principle. Logistics defined modern warfare beyond doctrine or calculations. Americans had demonstrated that a system of motion could sustain combat power indefinitely, provided human and mechanical elements cooperated seamlessly. Patton's advance became paradigm, illustrating that organizational creativity could outpace assumptions and that adaptability trumped historical predictability in determining outcomes decisively. By August 26th, the Red Ball Express established enduring lesson. Speed, coordination, and audacity could redefine battlefield logic. German generals, trained to trust mathematics, were forced to witness an operational truth beyond numbers. Logistics itself could dictate victory. Movement, persistence, and organization combined as instruments of power, ensuring Patton's army advanced continuously, rewriting warfare fundamentally through execution alone.